Welcome to Circle City Conversations, where the heart of Indianapolis comes alive through the stories of its people. Join us as we explore our city, one insightful conversation at a time.
Welcome, everyone, back to Circle City Conversations, where Indianapolis comes alive through the stories of its people. Join us as we explore our city one insightful conversation at a time. Recently, some of our guests have been trial lawyers like Mark Lopez and Jamison Allen, and I'm glad to have another one here with me. But before we get into that, I want to thank our sponsor, Hurst Limontes. It's an Indiana law firm representing Hoosiers for over 50 years. The lawyers at Hurst Limontes have dedicated their careers to putting the client first and making sure that when a client walks in the door, they're treated like people and not just another case or another number. You see, the big advertising law firms have to pay for all that advertising that they do somehow. So for them, you're just another number. And at Hurst Limontes, you're not. I'm here with Katie Karras of Hurst Limontes. Katie is a trial lawyer with tons of experience. Sure. Tons and tons and tons of experience. And I'm not aging her. I like to mess with her because I tell her we're the same age.
But we are not.
We are not. With a lot of experience, who loves fighting injustice and, more importantly, helping people, even if that means setting her ego aside and making sure we do what's best by the client. So, Katie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So I love your tone now. Look, this is like is this podcast Katie's tone?
Friendly, Katie. Friendly fire.
Right. So, Katie, we'll start very simple. Where are you from?
I was born in Columbus, Ohio. Moved to Indiana when I was 2. Grew up on the south side. Went to Perry Meridian. Went to University of Indianapolis. Graduated in 2004. Went straight to law school where I met the fine Alex Limontes. And we've been friends ever since. Graduated in 2007. Been in the Indianapolis area my whole life except for the time when I was a Buckeye.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For just a couple years.
Just a couple years.
We won't hold that against you.
I appreciate it.
So you are like me and a Hoosier.
I'm a Hoosier at heart.
Yes, even though we weren't born here, we were adopted Hoosiers. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So your undergrad, where'd you go to undergrad at?
Yeah, University of Indianapolis, also known as UND. Mm-hmm. Was a business major, also majored in Spanish, and knew I wanted to go to law school, so I went straight through.
So you were a Greyhound.
I was.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And you said before that, where'd you go to high school?
Perry Meridian.
Okay. So, and I won't ask you when you graduated, even though I made Chip tell me.
Yeah, well, I was a millennial graduate. 2000. It was a very, very special year to graduate high school.
Right.
And yeah, it was a good time.
First of the millennium.
First of the millennium. It felt very special to have that 2000
right
on my cap. So
law school, you did your undergrad. Why? What made you want to go to law school? Why'd you go to law school?
So when I was in high school, I took like a business law class and we got to do a mock trial. And I think it was like a murder. So it was a criminal case, but I applied and tried out to be one of the lawyers in the mock trial and just really enjoyed it. Just felt like I came alive. I always liked public speaking, but really felt like I came alive doing that. And I was like about 15 or 16. And I thought, I really want to do this. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a trial lawyer. I want to do trials. And so I just felt like I ultimately wanted to go to law school. So I did go to college and I didn't major anything traditional for going to law school because I always felt like, well, what if I don't get in? What if it's not for me? So I want to major in something that I love if being a lawyer isn't in the cards for me. But luckily it is.
So what'd you major in? What'd you choose?
Yeah, business, human resource management. Always been really interested in the employment side of running a business and things like that. And we talk about that here at the office. Really enjoy working with employees and staff and doing all of that. And Spanish, because I took Spanish in middle school and high school and I just continued on. And obviously that has helped me in my career as well.
So the different story than a lot of people, like, for example, myself, when I was in law school, I said to myself, Alex, you're never going to be a trial lawyer and you're never going to be a criminal defense attorney. And as you know, my first job was at the Marion County Public Defender Agency, but you had a different route. You saw trial work. You saw it. You were like, this is what I want to do. Right.
That is true. I just felt like being in the courtroom was something that I was really interested in. And when I took trial practice, my third year of law school, which does require that you get up and on a very early on Saturday mornings and go and do trial work when the courts are closed, I really enjoyed that. It's tough. And that's just like being a trial lawyer. It's tough. It's a lot of work. It's not something that a lot of people want to do. But if it's something that feeds your soul and your heart and you could do it to help people, it's it's really important.
That's what got you up on those Saturday mornings.
Yes, learning that and working on the craft. And obviously, we're always a work in progress. That's why they call it the practice of law. But that's what got me up, is being able to learn. And it is a performance to a degree. I mean, we are performers in the courtroom. We are, presenting our clients' cases. And I describe that to our clients a lot when getting ready for trial.
Yeah, you and I both like to tell clients similar things. We're telling their story, right? Mm-hmm. We are their storytellers.
Yes.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, you tried a ton of cases. Every story is different, right?
Correct.
And you can only do so much to tell that story, right?
Can't change the story.
Exactly. Can't change the story.
You can present it in a different light, but you can't change the story. I always describe trial work on the plaintiff side is we're like a movie producer. You're producing this show for the jury because we have the burden of proof. We are to produce this story and present it in the best light such that a jury really sees our clients for who they are and the case for what it is rather than what it's not. But the defense attorney or the insurance company on the other side, they're like a movie critic. They don't really have their own story to present. Their whole goal is to criticize our story to make the audience not like it. So I describe that you can work really, really hard on a case or a movie, and one critic can say one thing about it and not have actually done anything but criticize, and can convince an audience to not like a movie or not want to go see a movie. They didn't really have to do anything.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I never thought of it that way. So we're like movie producers. And our better defense attorney friends are going to love to hear that they're the movie critics.
I mean,
right?
They should know. They should know that we've all heard the throw it up on the wall and see what sticks. But that's how I feel about it. And I've used that analogy for several years just to explain to clients how difficult it is to take a case to trial on our side of things. Not that it should be, but why it is.
Right. Because a lot of people, and you've represented thousands of people, they have a certain perspective or a viewpoint that they have of lawyers, right?
Mm-hmm, of course.
And our ability, like we spend every single day in the courtroom arguing and fighting with each other, right?
Correct. It's not like an episode you see on TV. It really isn't. And even now, post-COVID, we spend most of our time in our office, and Zoom has really changed the practice. I know it's changed my practice and certainly changed how many miles I put on my car.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I was putting 35,000 miles on my car, traveling the whole state. And now I don't know what it is, but it's way, way lower. I mean, It's probably less than 10.
Wow.
Just whatever coming to the office is.
Right. Well, and that's a good point because, you and I, we started practicing at the same time. And fair to say, I mean, a lot of things have changed as far as technology goes, right?
Well, we didn't even have e-filing.
That's true.
We used to use a fax file,
stamp sign,
or you'd have to take it in.
Yeah.
You or someone in your office would have to take it in. I remember I was in law school. In early on in my practice, part of my job would be to drive over to the courthouse and go see the court staff and file it.
Yeah.
And, then sometimes either fax or email or, mail the copy to the other side. They wouldn't even know, or you wouldn't even know what motions were being filed against you for days.
Oh my goodness.
So
yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, kind of your early days in your career. You graduated law school, take the bar. What do you do next?
Oh, I went to the dark side first. I did defense work. So, I thought I was going to do something related to employment just because that was my passion. And it still is. I still really enjoy, I guess, in my work life, the employment side of things, just working with the staff and just that type of involvement. But I don't really, as you know, obviously we don't do employment law here. But first thing I did medical malpractice defense work. And that was just like, forged in fire, basically, just learning all of the medical issues and learning all different types of medical specialties and things that can happen, because I represented all different types of doctors in claims by their patients. And so I really learned really, really detailed medical issues for that first 4 years, and participated in a couple trials, nothing that I was really in charge of, but definitely participated, and really felt during that time frame, as time went on, that my heart was with the patients, that I felt, really strongly that some of the defenses, maybe I didn't feel like my personal beliefs aligned with that. And so I struggled with that. I still provided the best, defense I could for my clients, but then decided towards the end of that 4 years that it was time to make a switch.
And you worked for a really great defense firm, right?
Yes, doing medical malpractice defense. Now, that firm does general liability defense, premises work, auto accident work, but I solely did medical related defense work. Yeah, they're very good. They taught me well, for sure.
And we deal with them on the other side on some of our cases.
Of course, yeah. Luckily, I'm still friends with the attorneys, and I have had over the years a handful, 10 or more times where I've gone against the other firm. In fact, have a couple right now.
Yeah. So, do you find that in your practice, having that prior relationship, having worked at the defense firms, has that helped you with your practice?
I think it's helped me see both sides of things. You can see both sides of a case. I can see how an insurance company, especially when I handle the medical malpractice cases now, and on the plaintiff side, I know what type of argument they're going to make. I know what is important to them and is not important to them, and the values that they have on their side of things when they make their decisions on cases, whether they're going to make a settlement offer or not, and how much it's going to be. I think that's been helpful, and I just being able to have been on the other side of things does help me to advise my clients what the other side is thinking, that, and that the other attorney isn't always it's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
They're doing their job too. And let's make our case more palatable for them to want to resolve it.
Yeah.
Which isn't always being the most aggressive or the most unsavory. Sometimes being kind and nice gets you further.
Right. And it's funny you said that, because a lot of our clients, sometimes they'll get confused,
mm-hmm.
when they see us with having a collegial, good relationship mm-hmm. with the defense attorneys.
Well, we're going to see them over and over again.
Yeah.
So there's no reason necessarily to make an enemy.
Right.
You could be tough and you could be an advocate, which we are here, but you don't have to be angry and mean.
Yeah. And sometimes having that relationship, that collegial relationship, has been to benefit your clients, right?
Oh, absolutely. Those people are more likely to pick up the phone when you call.
Yeah.
More likely to respond to your email. And you say, when my client needs some more time to get their, interrogatory answers out, or we need, this whatever favor you might need on that one side, or I need some more time to get my experts in line, things like that. If you have a good relationship with them, they're more likely to work with you if you're more likely to work with them on those types of things.
So you worked at this a great defense firm, mm-hmm. and then you started working at a plaintiff's firm. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I worked down in Bloomington at Kinlan Law Office. If you've ever lived in Bloomington, you've seen Kinlan.
Or Indiana.
Well, you've seen his billboards, or in Bloomington, you've seen him in his car. So. Yeah. But I worked there, and that's where I got a majority of my trial exposure. Just a high volume, and tried a lot of cases. And I came in, I was in my late 20s, and just started handling my own cases. And that was really great, because that's really what I wanted, is more autonomy, more ability to direct my own cases rather than being, second in command, sometimes third in command on these cases. These were my cases. And of course, there's always oversight and management. But I was able to really learn how to be a trial lawyer there.
Yeah.
And tried a lot of cases.
Nobody, and to your point, nobody really knows that case better than the lawyer that's been working on it day in and day out.
Absolutely. You're living it, you're breathing it. And if I'm working on a case, even as you know, some cases we have for months, some cases we have for years. But when I'm in that case, working on it, it's committed to memory. I feel like you could ask me anything. I'd know everything about it. And then once it's gone, then it's gone. I focus on the next one. But I usually remember, what are my liens? What are my facts? What's the date? Where was it? I can really spout that off. Didn't we already do that? Or aren't we waiting on that? So.
Yeah. So, so you worked down there in Bloomington for a few years, right?
Yeah. Almost 5 years.
Okay. And then, did you switch firms to another firm?
I did. I switched firms to another firm, a little bit of a smaller firm than Ken Nunn, although it's as large as Ken Nunn now, but doing similar work. Yeah. As my time in Ken Nunn.
Okay. So you've tried a lot of cases, right?
A lot. We say a lot. It feels like a lot. I've tried about, I think it was like 26, 27 last time I counted. That is a lot.
Yeah.
But when people hear, oh, you've been an attorney for 16 years and you've only tried 27 cases, that doesn't seem like a lot. But that's because we just don't get the opportunity to try cases as much as attorneys did when we were much, much younger. In the 70s and the 80s, people were trying cases every week. And some people still try a lot of cases. But, for someone to try a couple cases a year, that's a lot.
Yeah. And we're talking about civil cases, right?
Yeah. I've only tried civil cases.
Yeah. Not criminal.
Yeah. People who try criminal cases, they'll try a lot of cases.
Yeah.
You probably tried a lot of cases as a criminal.
I tried as many cases as you did. Basically as a public defender, criminal defense attorney.
Just a small amount of time.
Yeah. So, and they were shorter too.
Sure. That's the difference.
Shorter trials.
Much shorter trials, much shorter time frame between when the case is filed and you try the case. Civil cases, you could get ready for years to try a case for 2 or 3 days.
Right.
Just because the stars have to align with the court and all the parties, your experts, and, there's more of a chance to settle cases.
You made a really good point about how, my partner, Bill Hurst, he's been around a long time. He remembers how it was back in the day. And you made a point about, it's different now. If you could just maybe elaborate more, like, why do you think less cases go to trial now versus even 25 years ago? Sure.
Well, there's been a huge uptick in alternative dispute resolution, mediations, arbitrations, mostly mediations. Well, the trial rules changed, and the rules on mandatory mediation before you get to trial has changed significantly. And obviously becoming a mediator in Indiana, there's so many people that are mediators and so many opportunities to get into mediation. And also the courts are so busy. All the courts, especially our courts here in Marion County, and in the greater populated counties, are so busy and so backed up that some of these courts have to set 10 civil trials every week that they have trials. They're setting 10 deep. So if you're 10th in line, your chances of getting up there are slim. And so the courts want you to really give it a good shot to try to get it resolved before they're going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 days of their time to dedicate their whole docket to your one case. So I think the fact that we have the rules on requirement of going to mediation, and of course, a lot of people don't want the risk of going to trial, and knowing that, there could be a great result, but it could be a not great result. And for our clients, unlike for the insurance company, it's their only shot.
Yep.
And for us, we have, we try cases and we have lots of cases and we have lots of clients. And so one good or bad result isn't going to make or break an attorney or a law firm. But for a client, they need to know what they're risking. And if the insurance company is there to be fair, they have to make that informed decision.
And that's where
we come in and just explain to them, what do we normally see in verdicts? What is the range? What are your chances of getting a verdict better than the offer after you take out the cost of going to trial? What are the chances of, getting less? What are the chances sometimes of even losing? It's always an option.
Speaking of trials, I know what the parts of trial that I love and hate. Hate is a strong word. Dislike the most.
Or don't look forward to.
Yeah, don't look forward to the most. So if you had to name the part of trial that you don't look forward to, which part would that be and why?
So if I can say two, I struggle to be excited about an opening statement.
Yeah.
Because it's like this is what the evidence is going to show. And you can't argue. It's a preview of what I'm like, I already know how it's going to happen. So it's hard because I feel like you're not allowed to argue. You're not allowed to really like tell them the good things that they're going to see and explain why it should matter to them. And it's like, I want you to hear that before you hear the evidence. I want you to hear why you're going to see this evidence. And so I struggle with opening because it's, I don't feel like I can give the full picture, my full belief on the case in this 5 or 10 minutes. I'm allowed to give a brief opening session.
Yeah. And then what about your favorite part of trial?
So I really enjoy, of course, I enjoy closing arguments because that's where I really get to, advocate for my clients. But unlike a lot of lawyers, 'cause I've talked to a lot of lawyers about it, I enjoy jury selection.
You do?
I do. And which is our chance to introduce ourselves and really talk to the jury. And I would not always say that was my favorite because, you can really get some verbal bombs from jurors. And I think because I have done so many jury selections in my career that I've learned to be able to work with those. And I went to a lot of seminars about jury selection that I can use those to my advantage. Because I used to be afraid of what people would say. And now I'm afraid of what people don't say.
Right.
Because they're thinking it.
Yeah.
And it's going to come out in your verdict if you don't get it out of their mouth and get them off the jury.
Yeah.
And they're going to harpoon you in their deliberations and your other jurors if you don't get it out. So I welcome it. I welcome the things that people say that show that they're not right for this jury, that they have some sort of beliefs or prejudice or whatever it is that make them not right for the jury. I welcome them to say the things and then I can work with that. It's like, it's okay to feel that way. It just means you're not right for this jury.
Yeah.
And then I can use other people who feels like them, who doesn't. And so I have learned to be able to kind of take those body blows, I guess, in jury selection that I used to be afraid of. So I do enjoy that.
Yeah. And I think that what a great distinction to make. And I think that that's something that gets lost with some lawyers when they're doing jury selection. They don't preface a lot of their conversations with these potential jurors as, it's okay to be this way. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you're inherently biased or prejudiced. It just means you may not be the right person for this particular type of case.
Correct. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like they shouldn't say that. No, if you feel, I want to know about it. You're not going to hurt my feelings. For all the things that people think about lawyers, you shouldn't be worried about hurting the feelings of this person who's standing up in front of you, because I'm not up here for you to tell me what you think I want to hear. I want you to tell me what's really in your mind and your heart about this case, because you owe it to the system and you owe it to my client whose only case is this case. You owe it to them to be honest about what your feelings are. And that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. You and I are that's why we work well together. We're very opposite in that regard, because I am not a big fan of jury selection. And mostly it's because I have a feeling when they come, a lot of those folks, when they come in there, it's like they don't even want to be there.
Correct.
Much less listen to some guy go up there and be like, hey, are you biased? Well, raise your hand if you're biased.
Yeah, exactly.
And
a lot of times they don't really want to be there. But I will tell you, I've had an opportunity to talk to many jurors after. Not everybody. Some people just bolt, okay? But I've had an opportunity to talk to many jurors. And I also tell them in jury selection that when your jury service is over, you don't believe it now, but you'll be glad that you were selected. You will have found it to be an enjoyable experience, because I don't know how many jurors, like whether it's 1 day, 2 day or whatever, afterwards they stick around and then they have lots of questions and they want to talk about what was important to them. Or they say like, why didn't we hear about that? Because then you can kind of tell them those behind the scenes things that they weren't allowed to hear. You can explain to them, maybe what evidence, what did not come in, or why there was an objection, because, it's over. So they seem very excited. And so I tell them, you might not believe it, but, being selected on this jury is not the worst thing, but you really have to be honest to see if you're right for this case for both my client and for the defendant. I mean, that's the reality. You have to find 6 people or, 6 plus an alternate who are really not feeling strongly one way or the other about the situation so that they can be neutral and they can be, that's what they're supposed to be, the right jury that can help make the right decision that obviously the 2 parties couldn't come to an agreement on.
Right. So you've helped a lot of people in your career, tons of them. So what is the craziest, wildest case you've ever worked?
Oh, I mean, it's hard to say because I feel like we always have so many crazy stories. But I had one case many years ago where my lady had worked 3rd shift and she was on her way home on one of those like county roads up in the northern Indiana area. She got hit by a guy who had crossed the center line and hit her car. He was a young guy and we couldn't really figure out why. He had been drinking. Why was this guy out? Why was he in the middle of nowhere traveling? And he ended up telling the story that he had been seeing this girl and he had come from one side of Indiana where he lived to visit her on the other side of Indiana where she was. And they had been at a party and they had been drinking. And then he ended up getting left at this party. And then he got attacked by these guys and partially stabbed.
Oh my God.
He was so scared for his life that he ended up leaving this party and driving himself back at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning back to his home, his temporary home where he had been going to school. And he had obviously been drinking and he crossed the center line. And then I felt bad for him to a degree, the fact that he was also injured in the collision, but of course can't recover because he's at fault. Yeah. And he was a baseball player and he injured his pitching arm and was unable to play baseball anymore. And so when I show up to the deposition to talk to this young man about why were you in the middle of nowhere at 5 a.m. half drunk and caused this car accident, this is not the story I was expecting to hear from him. And it was like, this is going to take a while. We got a lot to unpack here, okay? Because I was not expecting that story at all. So that would be, I guess, one of my craziest stories on how did a collision occur. I have another one where this lady fell off the balcony of her apartment complex, and we made a claim for some bad railings. And as we got into the evidence, there was a thought maybe that she was pushed off the balcony, and by a loved one.
Oh my God!
Who later fled the state. So
not so much of a loved one.
Not so much of a loved one. So that's been many years ago. But I just specifically remember going, that is not good. I mean, the railing still didn't hold her, but it still broke. But it was not and she doesn't remember because she was so terribly injured. So that I remember that being kind of like one of my weirder fact patterns as far as case.
Right.
So those two they stick out in my mind.
Yeah. It's funny. I always tell people that they ask me about what I do. And then I usually at some point mention to them that I see how people find the oddest, weirdest ways to hurt or kill themselves. Mm-hmm. Doing stuff, sometimes everyday activities. Right? Oh,
yes. I mean, my children call me the most overprotective because there's a long list of things they're not allowed to do because of weird circumstances I've worked on in my cases.
Right.
Let's just say my children were in 5-point harnesses in their car seats until my son was like through kindergarten, and I had a hard time sending him on field trips because you can't send a 5-point harness on a field trip in someone else's car, and his feet were practically touching the bottom of the vehicle, and he's still in a 5-point harness because I was so worried about him getting in a car accident. But Yeah.
Could you even find? He's a big boy. I mean, he's tall.
He was so
Could
tall.
You find one for him?
Oh yeah. He was thin. Head's hitting the roof and his feet are on the floor, and yet still in a 5-point harness. I think he was probably close to 6, and I finally gave that up.
Yeah.
But I had a case where a young person, young. I mean, she was too young to be in this, but she was in one of those high back boosters and had a significant seatbelt injury to her neck.
Yeah.
Severed her trachea. And I was like, oh, well, we won't be doing that.
Right.
Right there.
Right.
5-point harness till you're 18. You'll be driving to school.
Right. With a 5-point harness.
5-point harness. NASCAR style.
Sending you off to college.
Exactly. Yeah. I try to, deal with the anxiety I have from those, we see everything. We see all the bad stuff. We see all the bad stuff. And so you've got to try to put that out of your mind that those are the exception, not the rules. But it still makes me think twice about some things.
Oh, absolutely. Especially, I have 4 kids.
Mm-hmm.
If I could wrap them all in bubble wrap.
Exactly.
Yeah. 2 youngest ones need to be wrapped in bubble wrap.
Yeah.
So
like those, like those sumo costumes that they go in. Yeah, exactly. Just need to just go everywhere in that. No, right. I totally get it. As my kids have gotten older, I'm a little bit better about things, but they'll be in the driving age in the next couple of years. Now, I haven't emotionally dealt with that yet because we're not there, but it's going to be a hard time for me.
Right. Let's talk about kind of like professionally, some of your proudest professional moments. Like what's something that comes to mind?
Oh, I don't really seek outward recognition for that. So I would just say for me, some of my proudest moments are when I feel like I've done the right thing for my clients. I mean, we all get awards and, we all have recognition in our offices and out of our office. And we do things where people give us certificates or we're asked to speak at things. And that's always really nice. But for me, my proud moments are when you have a client that, you've worked really hard for and sometimes given them way more than they ever expected. And that's what sticks with me is how we can make other people feel, how the happiness and the satisfaction that we can do for those other people. And I guess if I had to choose one, I would say that in 2018, I tried a case for a family friend. And, we do represent, family and family friends, not a lot, but it happens. And you feel like a even higher sense of responsibility because those are people that you're friends with that really, really rely upon you. And I tried an underinsured case for her. And again, most cases don't go to trial. And I was so nervous because if, the jury didn't come back how we thought they were going to come back. And if we lost, because there was an offer on the case, but it just wasn't fair. And when we won, and we really did win, and it was just like the huge sense of relief and that you knew you were doing what was right. And just how good I felt for them that we had taken the insurance company to task and that's a person that I know and I'm going to continue to see in my regular life. And that we had really provided justice. That I think just knowing that I was able to, provide that for her felt really, really great.
Yeah. And taking their own insurance company.
Their own insurance company. Yeah. She had received a settlement from the other driver. But then her own insurance company, in my opinion, really, really put her through the ringer for a while and then took it to trial. And then we still had to fight them on some other things after trial, but we got every penny that the jury said we were entitled to. So
and it's funny, especially people that aren't lawyers and they hear about, well, it's my own insurance company. Mm-hmm. I mean, aren't they going to treat me fairly?
Not always.
No, not all the time, right?
No, not usually, really.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, yes, but not usually. And not usually on your own. And see, that was part of it, is that she had tried to go at it on her own and then realized that it just was not going to happen. And then, of course, obviously, we had to take the case to trial. And so that felt really, really, really great. Of course, I had that trial in, was it last summer, 2022?
That's what I was going to talk about.
Oh, yeah. That one felt real good, too. That felt really good. I think the other reason that the other one felt so good is just because it was a family friend and it was against her own insurance carrier. But the trial last summer felt really good just because the client, the issue with that case is why they hadn't settled it is because he had a gap in treatment. He'd have gone to the urgent care, went to his primary care physician, and he just followed what she said, which was could take a year to feel better. And so he waited the year patiently doing his home exercises and then goes back a year later and was like, I'm not any better. And then they do some additional treatment. But as we know, the damage is done and he's permanently injured. And the insurance company just really tried to cheap out on that one, really big time. And then we took it to trial. And what did we get? 6 times the last offer?
Six times.
Yeah, we got a really good verdict on that one. And the client was such a nice gentleman. And he had no idea. He had no idea when he's waiting that year that the insurance company was going to use it against him because that's not what he was thinking about. He was thinking about trying to get better.
Right.
And I don't even think he was even thinking about even making a claim until he didn't get better. And then by that time they were like, oh no, you don't get anything. You don't deserve it.
Right.
So
I remember that was a great case. You had one witness appear remotely.
His wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the nurse practitioner that had treated him was by video deposition.
Yeah, I do have to say you were doing some legal dancing around that courtroom.
Yeah.
I've not seen a trial lawyer dance that much in a long, long time.
Yeah.
You were all over the place.
We just met the burden.
Barely
barely met the burden, but I guess it counts, right?
Yeah, it does. Well, especially when you do. They'll think twice next time they make an offer like that on a case, knowing that you will take them to task.
Absolutely. We'll take them too. If we can provide the evidence, we will.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first trials, first couple of weeks that the new courthouse was open.
That's right.
So not only are we at a new location, we're trying to figure out the new technology. And that case was heavily technology based because we had one remote witness.
Mm-hmm.
She testified by, Zoom or WebEx, and then 3 videotape depositions that we had to play for the jury.
Through that. So the new courtrooms at the community justice campus have these, basically these look like giant podiums, and you kind of plug your computer in, before. Remember, we used to roll in the cart TVs and pop a VHS.
Oh, the VHS, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Or even a DVD.
Yeah. Oh, now it's all through the computer. So you definitely learn some things in that trial too.
Yeah.
Of what you need to bring now for the technology, which is, in my opinion, a separate computer just to play your depositions, because you can't do anything else on your computer while that's playing. And so I couldn't do any work or do any prep work for my closing, because the jury can see everything on my computer that I'm doing. So the only thing that my computer is allowed to do is play that videotape deposition. So I will definitely bring a separate, computer. So anybody out there, a lawyer who hasn't tried in the new Justice Center, bring a separate computer just to play your videos.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. Just a separate, it doesn't have to be anything fancy as long as it plugs in, right?
Yeah, exactly. It could be, I guess to the extent you have something loaded on like an iPad.
Yeah.
If it can play, that's all you really need.
Right. So we talked, you have kids, right? Yeah.
Yes, I have my 2 children, and then I have 2 stepchildren.
So, and you're a trial lawyer, and I have kids. I have 4 kids too, and I'm a trial lawyer. So to young lawyers out there that want to go into trial work and understanding, like you said, that it's a lot of work. What's the biggest piece of advice you can give them as young parents and young lawyers?
Sure. It takes a village. It really does. Hopefully you have some family or friends that can help out, because you're not going to be able to be there every day and every night. You're not always going to be there to pick them up from school or pick them up from daycare. And so, or, a spouse that can be supportive and helpful, those types of things. But one of my greatest joys, of course, is raising my children. So I would never even advocate for choosing one. If you want to be a parent, you can do both. And one of the things is, what I've had to learn in my practice, especially as I've, been able to work at a place where, your family life is important too, is sometimes being able to tell the other side, that just doesn't work for me. Okay. Right. And you've got to be able to, advocate for your clients and be understanding on scheduling, especially we have doctor depositions or hearings and things like that. There are certain things that can't be avoided. You have to do things after hours, before hours, on weekends. But there are some things where you can say, you know, that doesn't work for me. I'm out of the office that day, or my children have a field trip that day, and or I'm going to take that day to spend with my kids, or whatever it is. You have to be able to say, it doesn't work for me. I can't do that. And we just need to pick another day, because there's going to be times you're going to miss things, and it is unavoidable. So if you stand up for yourself as a person, as a whole person, not just a lawyer, because we are whole people, then that's important. And that doesn't mean you're not an advocate. Doesn't mean that you're not a great lawyer. It just means that you understand that you have to fill your cup too.
Right.
And if you want to be able to represent these people and put your all into being a lawyer, you have to be able to, fulfill yourself and take some time for yourself. Otherwise, you're just running yourself ragged. And with kids, I don't know, it gets easier, but it doesn't get easier. I always say that as kids get less physically exhausting, meaning like you're not wrangling them all the time, they get more emotionally exhausting. So it's like, one goes down and one goes up. So like my children are not physically exhausting anymore. In fact, they're both larger than me now, but the emotions are a lot. And they also don't sleep as much. So the bedtime, you don't get that bedtime break that you get when they're little, where they go to bed like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Most nights it's like they go to bed and I go to bed. And in the summertime, it's a wild, wild west. So that's the best advice I can give, and is just, try your best to have a balance, and don't let the fact that you're trying to have a balance stress you out. That shouldn't be stressful. There's always tomorrow. And, I would think most of the people on the other side, they have the same desires too.
Right. Katie, you worked at some larger advertising law firms, and, we don't do that level of advertising. What is the biggest difference that you've noticed between working at a place like that versus more of a boutique, smaller firm like this?
I think I get more direct personal referrals from other attorneys who work at smaller firms. You see the inclusion and the cohesiveness and that you can provide that more personal attention to the clients. It's less about volume and more about quality. And so I appreciate that and enjoy that, and enjoy the relationships I've made with some of the other lawyers that refer us cases, because they have a smaller firm, but they don't do exactly what we do. And same thing, that we can send cases back to them that are a little bit more their specialty. So I can really appreciate that. And I really appreciate having more of a one-on-one connection with my clients, because I can see them from day one.
Yeah.
And have more autonomy and decision making with them, and help them guide them through the process from the beginning.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast with a guy named Chris Dreyer. He's a really smart digital marketing guy. And he talks about these larger firms and how when they're solving the problem, when they're solving the case, they're solving it for the average. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the average that a case like this would make, versus a smaller firm like us? We are focused on the individual,
on the current case.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, of course, there's the thought that if you fold with one client, that maybe you'll fold with another, because that one client just couldn't handle pursuing on. But I don't really think about it that way, because the other side should know every case is different. If one wanted to settle sooner, but yeah, there is that thought at some of the bigger firms, is that you have to take a case to trial to prove that you'll take all the cases to trial.
Yeah. Because,
so the person kind of becomes a casualty.
Right.
For the greater good, I guess. Yeah. And so it's, for me, I work with clients to meet their individual needs, because there's always going to be cases you're going to try.
Yeah.
You're always going to have a case, in your moving forward, that's going to go to trial, that just needs to go to trial and is going to go to trial. But if you have a client that doesn't want to go to trial, you shouldn't substitute your judgment for theirs.
Right.
You can give them advice, and you can tell them, oh, this is fair or not fair, you should hold off for this or that. But in the end, what they want, what's best for them, what's best for their mental health and for their wellness and for their life moving forward, you need to provide the proper closure for them whenever they need it.
Right. We're lawyers, right? We have big egos, right?
Correct.
Sometimes we just got to check those, especially for the client's sake.
Absolutely.
One last question. Mentors in your life. Who are some of your memorable mentors, people that you remember, and some of the better advice?
Oh, absolutely. So naming names here?
Yeah.
Well,
I have to have more guests for my podcast.
Of course. So, when I was a law clerk, which we haven't mentioned the law firm, I was a law clerk at Lewis Wagner back in 2006. Stephanie Kassman she was in charge of the law clerks, and she was great. She was a great mentor. She took me to depositions and taught me, why am I taking this deposition? Yeah. What do I want out of this deposition? And she, helped me to, I talk to my clients about how depositions are like job interview. Yeah. They're a job interview for your case. Yeah. And she helped teach me, why are we doing that, and how to present ourselves as the attorney to get the best testimony from the other side that you need for your case. And I feel like I've taken that with me. And I definitely, interestingly enough, when I was at Ken Nunn, Mike Phelps, who is a great trial attorney, taught me a lot. I mean, many of the gentlemen over there taught me a lot, but, Mike was kind of assigned to me and sat with me at some of my first couple of jury trials. And I just learned so much from him, mostly about just, confidence and really showing the jury that you believe in your case, and just kind of trying to have that charismatic vibe that the jury will latch onto. And I try to take that with me, not only my jury trials, but in my arguments, because we argue in front of judges way more than we argue in front of jurors. And I try to go in, and some people come in, they just recite their law and recite it, they're reading into it. It's like, that's not convincing anyone. You need to go up there. You need to stand up there, and you need to have a face-to-face conversation with that judge and explain to them why you're right. Yeah. And you need to look them in the eye, and you need to make sure that they believe you. Right. And I feel like that's, I've won some motions, I mean, they're always a close call. That's why we're fighting over it. And I feel like I've really gone over that hump on these issues, because I go in like confident, ready, facing them. I'm not looking into my paper, and, and you engage them. Yeah. So, and I just feel like it's not always about mentors, but sometimes it's about people who are going through the same thing you're going through. Yeah. They're coming up with you. Yeah. And just being able to collaborate in your firm, out of your firm, other female lawyers are going through the same thing. I mean, I've got a Kate Frankie, Amy Davis, we're kind of, trudging together, on some of these things, and they're great trial lawyers. And Amy had that great verdict a couple years ago. And sometimes it's just over here commiserating together about what you're going through and what have you seen, and have you seen this? And I have, a lot of lawyers that are similarly situated, of course, not just in this office, but, Harvey Lancaster, I worked with for several years, Rudy Longman, like always just talking about cases. Have you seen this? What do you think I should do with this? What would you do? What do you think about this situation? Yeah. And so those people, it's like, you got to work together. We're all in it together. Yep. I'm a firm believer in a rising tide raises all ships. Absolutely. So, well, Katie, thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Very enjoyable. It's always a good time. Absolutely. So much fun to talk to. Thanks for listening to Circle City Conversations podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any more future conversations.
Thanks for listening to the Circle City Conversations podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more future conversations.